Woof. Technical difficulties are a motherfucker, to say the least. All right, let's wait till we get some people in the room. Let me close this out so we don't get no back noise. I'm gonna give a minute or two for everybody to come into the room. As you come in the room, please raise your hand, say what's up, do something so that I know you're here, and then we can start the show. I'm very excited to have this conversation tonight. This is something that I believe is needed. Um, so again, as you're coming in the room, please just let me know you're here. So then we can definitely start the show. Uh, this is the problem. Oh, Miss Lou Dubois, good evening. How are you? So before we start the show, just so everybody understands, we were having a little technical difficulties, but we've gotten them straightened out. It happens to be like a Murphy's Law situation. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. As a matter of fact, I got a new boom arm to this mic, and it's just one of those situations. Mr. Ethan Aviles, salute, brother. I hope you're feeling well. I know you're going through a trying time right now. Miss Halcyon Williams, all the way down in Florida, we see you. I'm glad everybody's coming in the room. I'm glad you can make it. I think this is a very, very important discussion that we're going to have tonight with a very, I don't even know the proper words to encompass her, who she is and what she has done. But I commend her for her bravery and what she continues to do every day. And I thought it was very, very important to bring this story to the set because, as you know, we're about real people telling real stories. So, with that said, you know what? We're just going to start the show. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mr. A. My partner, Mr. Sally Sasson, is not with us tonight. He is the athlete in the group, and he actually is participating in a tournament, so he won't be here tonight. But, you know, the show must go on, and I have to hold it down for my brother, so I'm glad everybody can make it. Miss Lily Singh, good evening. First time seeing you here. And my brother Will, salute. A lot of Sunset Park residents and ex-residents as well. Tonight, very excited to speak to this woman. Tonight, the set welcomes Miss Janeen Torres Cabrera, and I hope I didn't mangle her last name. It's Cabrera. Cabrera. Miss Janeen Torres Cabrera. She is an advocate. She is an author. She is a public speaker, a motivational speaker. There's so many things that this woman does. And I think she has a very important story that needs to be heard. And through mutual people and friends that we keep around us, I was able to make this connection. We had a brief discussion, and I immediately was like, yeah, I want to bring you on the show. Miss Cabrera is from Sunset Park, if I'm not mistaken. If not, she'll straighten it out when she comes into the room. But she's authored, I believe, 2 children's books. And she is just somebody that is a tremendous personality. And I've been trying to reach out and connect with somebody in her lane to bring their story to the set. And it's very difficult. But I'm glad that we made the connection, and I'm even more happier to bring her story to the show. So I hope everybody will sit tight, pay attention with open ears and hearts. And at some point, hopefully, towards the latter part of the show, I'm going to open up the phone lines. If you want to, you know, give her well wishes, you know, whatever it is, we'll have the phone lines open so you can call in. So before we start the show, I just want to share this with everybody, because it's like every other day, you know, we're losing someone. And we were talking about this gentleman on the show, and, you know, it turns out that, you know, he passed away. So, you know, it's very sad that hip hop has to lose another beloved icon, if you would. So rest in peace to Black Rob. You know, we all loved his music, and it was sad to see the condition that he spent his last days, months, weeks. We were hoping that he would have pulled through, but unfortunately, he hasn't. Um, and also on another somber note, I just want to send love to my cousins Sherry and Linda, um, and Lily. My aunt is in the hospital right now in ICU in very dire conditions. But I just want to send them love. I know they're, going through a very difficult moment in time. No matter how old you get, you're never ready to lose your mom. So I just want to send them love and well wishes. So salute to Miss Carmen Quinones and the brother, Mr. Ivan Lopez. We see you. So tonight, as I said, we're going to welcome Miss Janeen Torres Cabrera to the show to tell her story. And I hope everybody can listen with open ears and hearts. And I hope that you guys learn something and also garner some perspective as to what we deal with as humans on every different level of life. Miss Marina Del Torre, sorry. Good evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guest, Miss Janeen Torres Cabrera. Janeen.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. A little
Awesome.
anxious, but good.
Well, listen, we had a little technical difficulty.
That was fun.
Definitely was, right? It was like trying to read lips. Um,
Yeah.
just made it a little entertaining. But I'm just so you know, I don't know. Can you see the chat that's going on in the room? To your
I have my phone next to me, so I do see a little bit of it going on.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, there's a lot of people in the room, and they're definitely very supportive. Everybody's here; they're very excited to hear you speak. Um, and I before we start, I just want to tell you, I watched a video or two of yours on IG as well as YouTube, and I find it uh, enlightening and heartening, if you would, that somebody who is 6 degrees of separation is speaking about these topics and in the way that you do, because when you speak about them, it's from a very real and organic place, and you speak about them very confidently. So when I saw these videos, I was like, wow, this woman actually, she stands on 10 toes down, and she's in a good place. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to tell you that I think that your public speaking is definitely sharp. So was I wrong to assume that you're from Sunset Park?
No, I was actually born and raised in Sunset, and in my teenage years was raised in Borough Park, but Sunset
Okay.
and Borough Park are kind of a blurred line, so I was often in Sunset, but definitely where I was born at.
Yeah. Borough Park and Sunset are like cousins. So, all right, let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
As I often do with guests, I like to have them come on and just tell their story where it starts, which is, their childhood and teen years.
Yeah.
So, I understand you're an author. You authored 2 children's books?
Done two children's books that are published, and I have a boatload of other ones on the pipeline coming down, but funding and budgeting and things like that. So that's what's slowing up the pipeline. But two books that are actually out and in people's hands. The first one was A Time to Clean, and the second one is called The Painted Poem.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the first two that you did, were those self-published?
Those were self-published. I started my own publishing company, so they're published traditionally through a small trade publisher, which is what I am.
Right.
But I guess you could also say they were self-published because I went through the whole route of starting a publishing company just in order to be able to put them in readers' hands.
Ah, okay. So, Janine, you know, as I said, we're gonna start at the beginning. So, at what point, do you start to understand that the life you're leading is very different from the peers around you? Did you start to understand that very young, or was it more towards your teen years?
Um, I think very young, I realized that the life I was leading was very different. Um, I have memories being in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and maybe behaving in ways that I thought parents couldn't know about, but I thought children knew about, and seeing my peers being surprised, you know, caught off guard by some of my behavior, and then trying to make sense of why it wasn't something they did or knew about or why they found it odd. I just thought it was something you didn't tell parents. So I think very young, I kind of knew that that I had information other people didn't, and I didn't know why.
Right.
Yeah,
So as you're growing up, and you start reaching sort of like your outside of those very young years, elementary school, and moving on to into junior high school, um, how do your experiences start to shape that part of your life? Because when you're a teenager, that's when a lot of things start to change.
yeah,
And for a young lady to be in the position that you were, you know, it's usually the guys, the males, that start to be aggressive and out of control and sort of, acting on impulse, if you would,
yeah.
right? So in your teen years, how was your world shaping? How were your friendships with other girls, and did these things start to affect and bleed into those relationships as well?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I think I realized that something had happened to me sometime in elementary school, probably around 9 or 10.
Hmm.
There was an assembly at school, and they talked about molestation, and they talked about, adults who ask you to keep secrets, and kind of in that
That moment.
that moment is when it hit me, and I said, "Oh, you know, that happened to me. That doesn't happen to everybody."
Mm,
So I think I went home that day and just tried to process, what was at the assembly and what happened, and do I tell anybody? And then between the age of 9 and 10 through like 13, I really carried the secret. Now it became an actual secret. Do I tell somebody this happened? Am I going to get in trouble for it? Did I contribute to what happened to me? Because as a kid, um, I went looking for my abuser. I thought we had some kind of a connection. So in my teenage years, I actually envisioned myself going to jail. Did I do something wrong? If I finally say this secret, what happens to me? Do I have to go to court? Do I have to, put my molester behind bars? So I had so many overwhelming things that I was going on, that I was battling as I went into junior high school. So now I'm in junior high school, and you have all these new emotions flooding in you. You have hormones. I had crushes. And, how does that play into the secret that I carry? So I was still technically going through my abuse. My abuser was still taking advantage of me when I would be over there.
mm,
And now I knew that I kind of had these feelings for boys, and so there was the pushback and the rebelling of me saying, you're not going to do this to me anymore. This is something that's bad, and this can't happen anymore, and this is a secret, and what we're doing is not allowed. So
yeah.
that, I had a little bit of that pushback through my early junior high school years, but I think junior high school was very hard for me. I was really trying to find myself. I was being bullied a lot. I didn't have a voice. I felt like no one understood me. Where people always had this tendency to come and pour their lives out to me and ask me for advice. I had such an advanced way of thinking. I was the mother hen of all my groups from very young, but I never really felt that I could open up to people or that people could really know me and my secrets and my family and things. So I carried a lot of shame because of that. I don't think I showed up authentically as myself with my friendship. So I really didn't feel that anyone knew me. Even my best friends, I really felt like I was alone.
I find it's commonplace, when talking about this subject, that you find that characteristic of blaming oneself, of it's my fault, because I think that as a child you're too you're too much of an adolescent to really understand and process what's going on, what's
Yeah.
being done to you, right? And you're put in a position that if you don't have anybody recognizing the signs and taking the time to protect you,
Yeah.
ultimately
Yeah.
you're sort of left in this shell.
Yeah.
And it, people, like right now in this moment, I'm speaking of it as I'm an outsider,
Yeah.
right? What do I really know that that encompasses you? But I've been close to and know enough people who have been close to me that have endured um, this,
Mhm.
to the point that I everything that you're speaking to right now, I understand it almost
Yeah.
fluently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's leading to my next question of, in that space, was there anybody that picked up on what was going on?
I want to say no because that's how I felt then. I
Right.
think that people every now and again probably caught me doing something I shouldn't have been doing.
Hmm.
And I honestly just think that I was growing up in a time where it was so commonplace for people to have had an experience with sexual abuse, that they rationalized it and they normalized it. So if you kind of saw a child acting fast or fresh, you kind of reprimanded them and said what you had to say, but you really didn't sit the kid down and say, where'd you learn that, where'd you get that from?
Right.
And even talking, like, as I did share my story about my molestation, you do realize how many people have had some form of sexual violation against them, whether it was the friend of a parent or an uncle or an older brother who just, maybe it happened once or it happened a few times, or it wasn't so severe. And you kind of just start to normalize it and think that everyone has this experience with sexual abuse and it's not that big of a deal. And I think for many years that's how I felt. Like,
Hmm.
once I said it and the cat was out of the bag, I talked about it often growing up, and I felt like I had made peace with it and I had my healing, and I could even be around my abuser and say hello and be respectful to him. And I had normalized it so much, like, okay, it was something I went through and it's not a big deal. But it really wasn't until much later in life, when I was struggling with mental health issues, I was struggling with anxiety and depression, bad relationships, bad friendships, feeling taken advantage of in my work environment, where you kind of, your life slows down. You're older now, you're not partying and distracting yourself as much, and now you have a chance to really say, am I happy? What really is troubling me? Where does my anger come from? Why do I keep finding myself in repetitive cycles? And
Right.
so, for some people, that's the beginning of self-reflection and understanding, where you came from and where you've been and where you are. And I had this deep curiosity about myself. Why do I do the things that I do? I feel like most of us, there's a duality in life. We feel like there's two such contrasting parts of our personality. And for the most part, I was raised really well. My mom was always on top of us and super strict. She had us in church, she had us in the youth group. I pulled good grades. I never acted out in school. I was a respectful child. But yet, I had this other side of me that nobody really knew about, where I was fast, I was promiscuous. I put myself in environments that my mother often didn't know I was in, looking for, trying to feed that trauma that now I understand why I did those things. You're living life on the edge. You have this reckless type of mentality because you don't understand where these patterns come from, where these patterns of behavior come from. So as an adult, I really started to sit with myself and dive deep into what is trauma and what does sexual abuse do to you. And, I kind of reverse engineered who I was today, what patterns in my life, patterns of thought, patterns of behavior, what belief systems do I hold? And I just kept reverse engineering the psychology behind that. Where do these behaviors form from? Where does this type of thinking form from? And in doing that, I was able to say, whoa, this was all trauma. Here I'm thinking that a certain skill set of mine is just, this God-given skill set, but come to realize later that they're just trauma responses. They're things you learn through being traumatized as a child, and how you perceive and interact with your world. So that kind of was not a midlife crisis, but certainly, like, just like, who am I? Trying to relearn myself all over again.
Like
And
an
who would
awake,
I have been without this trauma? You
right?
know,
Almost like an awakening, so to speak.
it was definitely an awakening, and it changed everything in my life immediately. Like a band-aid was ripped off, and I suddenly couldn't unsee all the things that I now understood about myself and who I had surrounded myself with. And all of my patterns, I couldn't unsee it. And then I said, okay, so then what do I do about it now? And how do I make sure that I don't pass this cycle of generational trauma onto my daughter now, who's 5? I have a son who's 21, and he grew up with me, and he struggled with me through a lot of those patterns of behavior and dysfunction. But now I have a new chance to do it right. And how do I show up to life differently so that I can parent this little girl so that she doesn't go through the same things that I went through and struggle in those ways?
I want to ask you because there was a you stated trauma, the word trauma,
Yeah,
quite a few times in what you were putting out right now, and I want to ask you, do you believe that trauma can ultimately dictate or change the course of your sexuality, your sexual experiences, your relationships, and how sex plays into a relationship that you have? Do you believe?
100%,
Okay.
100%. And I
Okay.
think the mental health industry is just now understanding the ramifications of trauma and retraining or relabeling, a lot of these mental disorders and symptoms that we see in society.
Mhm.
But they 100% contribute to how your brain develops. They contribute, when we're young and we're in our childhood, our brain is going through such a rapid formation process.
Mhm.
And it really alters how your brain develops. So to say, it's just an emotional experience, it's not. It's also a physical thing that is changing within your body, which then changes your nervous system, changes how you perceive your world, how you respond to your world, how you respond to stress, and really makes up your whole belief system. So in order to rewire that, which is where I feel I'm on the path now, rewiring my brain,
Mhm.
trying to heal my brain from the traumas that I went through that allowed me to have this reckless behavior or reckless thinking or limiting belief type systems. So what we see in our communities when we see, schools that are not functioning well, or communities that are plagued by violence, these are signs of childhood trauma in action. And these children are really trying to survive and cope, and with very limited help and instruction. And that's really where my advocacy jumps in, is that I just feel like we need to do a hard reboot on how we raise our children, how we understand brain formation, and the subtle forms of trauma. Because when you hear the word trauma, you automatically think war or a natural disaster. You
Right.
think a car wreck, something really horrible. But what we really see playing out in our relationships, the things that people spend all day posting memes about online, are the more subtle forms of trauma that happen in your childhood.
Right.
The 4 major childhood wounds that happen between your caregivers and you while you're being raised. And they happen for so many reasons. And the 4 major wounds, they call them the injustice wound, the betrayal wound, the abandonment wound, and the rejection wound. And sometimes you can have such well-meaning parents that they try so hard to do everything and be there for you. But life is hard. And maybe your parent is a single parent and they're working a lot,
Mhm.
or your parents are in school after they go to work. And so there's only so many hours in a day, that a parent and their child can really bond. And if your parent is working all day, going to school, trying to survive and make ends meet, there's a break in how your needs are being met. There's an inconsistency to how your needs are being met. You're really alone most of the time. And growing up in the 80s and 90s, most of us were latchkey kids. Your parents went to work and you
Yeah.
came home and you let yourself in and you made yourself some lunch. But for the majority of the day, you were by yourself. And so there wasn't a lot of direction with the types of things that kids are exposed to socially and romantically. And so I was winging a lot of those things. And so then when we find ourselves operating from a place of dysfunction as an adult, and people are like, what's wrong with you? Why is she so lazy? Or this girl jumps from relationship to relationship. What's wrong with her? We criticize and we judge without really understanding that these coping behaviors started somewhere in a very, very young state, usually between 4 and 7, where someone learned that this was how you attach to people. And this is how you respond to stress. And this is how I cope with my stress. So what we see in adulthood is really just undeveloped children, undeveloped emotions that we're now in an adult body, but we're still operating from this emotional ignorance, on how to show up to life and their trauma responses.
If everybody's paying attention in the room, I think that Janeen just touched on something that's super, not only interesting, but informative. You know, seeing how people respond in their situations only demonstrates their inability to show themselves as adults, because what they're actually doing is signaling trauma.
Yeah.
Where you see kids that instantly deal with situations aggressively or
Yeah.
violently, when you see children, who crawl up into a ball in a corner because they don't want confrontation, these are all signs of trauma, right? And right now, if you look at these last two generations, even 3 or 4, you know, we see all of that.
Mm.
It's manifesting now as we speak. You just look on the internet, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not only from the sexual violence that has occurred, it's also drug abuse, alcoholism,
English.
abandonment. There's so many different facets to it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, Janine, I'm sure you can probably agree, we as a society are not recognizing, one, and two, we're not caring for them. I
No.
think, I
No,
think,
we're vicious. We're
yeah,
vicious.
yes,
We've
very much
lost
so.
we've lost any type of
Empathy.
yeah, and also, I think that many years ago, we were in more of tight-knit communities. And so, what we view as old school ways and people being in your business, people really did have more of a handle on each other, and it kept us resilient and stronger. But I think with this new way that we are, where, no one can come in on your life, no one can say anything. We're hypersensitive to any type of criticism, or even from family and friends. We don't want to hear it. We isolate ourselves in our bubble. We have our technology, our Netflix, and we're good to go. And so the evolution of people and that forward movement has really, I think we're really seeing a decline in people's ability to function and cope with life. And it's why we see so many people, coping in unhealthy ways, and isolating themselves and on substances, and violent and angry. We see so many angry people around us. I spent so many years in my anger and rage, not really understanding where that rage came from. But it's because we're all holding so much of this pain in, and it's so unvalidated. No one has validated us and said, yeah, you shouldn't have gone through that. Someone should have been there for you through that. And we even feel shame just to speak about it. For so many years, I felt like me talking about what I went through was a reflection of my mom, and how she was there for us, and all these things that she worked so hard as a single mom to provide for us. But there were cracks in the system, and I fell in those cracks. And so there's a shame that comes with speaking about what you went through as a kid, because it feels like you're pointing the finger to your family and your parents and caregivers and saying, you weren't there for me enough. You failed, but we're really all operating from the best place we can. We hope that as parents, that's where we're coming from, that we're doing the best we can, that, with whatever facilities we have and knowledge we have, that we're using all those tools to be the best parent. But we fail in so many ways because we're still coping with our own pain and our own trauma. So even if your mom was there, sometimes your mom was checked out, and anytime you needed to sit and talk with them, they couldn't. Maybe they were in a domestic violence situation, and it made them very hard for them to, number one, listen to you and be there for you, show up and nurture you, regulate you when you were in crisis, because they don't even know how to regulate themselves. They're so detached from their self. And we see this in parenting a lot. And it's not until you get older and life quiets down and you can reflect on your mistakes, and your nervous system kind of starts to slow down, just because that's what happens. And you don't feel as anxious, and now you realize the mistakes you made. But when we're living in survival mode, your mind, that's where, trauma goes from being trauma to just PTSD, which is what we see so many people functioning with. And we hear PTSD and we think that only soldiers go through that. But sexual abuse is one of the main ways that someone can develop chronic PTSD or complex PTSD. It's through, repeated events of trauma that someone has now learned to cope with. And by being in those stressful feelings all the time, your body is basically going through like a fight or flight response all the time, releasing stress hormone, stress hormone, stress hormone. And so you can't think, you can't really function properly, you can't really show up for life because your body is living in a survival mode. We're not meant to live in that way. So we're forgetful, we forget things at work, we forget things with our children, we forget important events because our body is just not releasing the other chemicals that it needs to release in order to make us a full functioning and healthy being. When you're in constant stress mode, you're constantly hypervigilant, you're constantly on edge, feeling like something is going to happen at any moment. Your perception of the world is dangerous, you don't trust people. You may attach to people incorrectly, either too clingy or just kind of not be able to attach to people. You kind of hold everyone at arm's length. So these childhood traumas that we go through, which are mainly the betrayal, the rejection, the abandonment, the injustice wounds, they will affect our attachment styles, and it took me a long time to realize that I did have a codependent attachment style. And where that came from, those were from my own abandonment wounds, dealing with traumas I went through with my dad, seeing my dad as an alcoholic, seeing him be a violent man in the home, him not being able to meet my needs consistently, often having to be the parent to take care of him when he was inebriated or, just bombed out of his mind and crying to me. And I'm trying to reassure him instead of him reassuring me. I finally realized that my abandonment wounds caused me to just allow anyone into my life. I really had no boundary or standards for people to enter my life. So you find yourself older, you're resentful, you're rageful, you feel like no one appreciates you, you're blaming everyone, you're attacking people now because you never set boundaries, you never use your voice to say, I want reciprocity in my relationships, I want reciprocity for the energy that I give to you, I expect you to be there for me as well. I found myself in my 30s looking around and saying, I'm just around takers. I feel like all I do is give. I'm there for everyone. I'm jumping for everyone.
I'm sorry to interrupt you because
Oh,
everything you're
please.
bringing to the table, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining the show, I'm your host, Mr. A. This is Set 6145. Tonight we are speaking to Miss Janeen Torres Cabrera, and she is putting it all out there. And again, I'm going to say I have to commend you, and I respect your honesty and most of all your bravery for what you're doing right now, and I appreciate you. Because
Thank
I
you.
think this is a message for quite some time that I wanted to bring to the set, because again, people all around me that I know and love in one way, shape, or form have experienced this in their life. And I think that you coming on the show and speaking of it in the way that you are will sort of give them solace, give
Mhm.
them understanding, and make them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And these are things that they can share with their children or the person that they love.
Mhm.
You know, it's just important and it's needed. But
Yeah.
something that you hit on when speaking about your dad um, speaks to me
Mhm.
because I'm a father. I have a beautiful daughter and a great son. But my whole life, from the moment that I looked in that little girl's eyes, from the first time that she called me dad, I always knew that I think I would go to jail 10 times over
Yeah.
if somebody did anything to her, let alone make her feel, that I'm sorry. Let me rewind that. I never wanted my daughter growing up and becoming a woman looking for validation from men ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always have a very strong disdain for men who have children and abandon them,
Yeah.
and specifically have daughters and allow the TV or the world to raise them.
Yeah.
Because the drama, the trauma that happens with a young lady, not to say it doesn't happen with boys, because it does, but the trauma that happens to a young lady that doesn't have her father in her life or a male figure in that slot to
Yeah.
to validate her and say, "Mama, you're special. You're a queen. You're beautiful." That young girl has a leg up, right?
Yeah.
She just has something that not everybody's going to get. And I was hoping you could
Yeah.
kind of speak to, you know, that specific topic, you know, not having your father uh
You're breaking up a
sort
little
of
bit.
ingrain that in your person, and,
Yeah.
and how that affected how you deal with men as you got older.
Well, we do see that women suffer from complex PTSD at higher rates. And we think soldiers, they're the ones that are dealing with this. But the reason why women deal with it at such a higher rate is because of sexual abuse. We have a higher prevalence of being sexually assaulted in our lifetime. So when you grow up without a healthy dynamic with your dad, when there is an abandonment wound there that's already occurred, you feel rejected. You are now looking to attach with people in a way that is anxious because you feel like people leave you. You feel like people abandon you. So a lot of times the way that abandonment wound will show up in people's life is that they become people pleasers. They will fawn for attention. They will have an inability to say no or to set any kind of boundary. Their voice is not established, and so there's a masculine energy wound where we haven't been exposed to a healthy masculine energy. So we have these emotional wounds, these responses that we respond to life with, and then we have unbalanced masculine and feminine energy. So for myself, I can look back and think I was always this tomboy, and I just thought that that was because. But I learned very young to be a doer, to do what I needed to do. At 9 years old, I was the baby sister, but I was the first one who was cooking. I was doing laundry. I was super in my masculine energy. And that continued with me through adulthood, where I was always chasing a new goal, trying to do a new degree. I wanted to do nursing, no business management, no this, I could never perform at a high enough level where these are all forms of external validation that you're looking for people to compliment you, to say how smart you are, how good you are, and there's subtle forms of manipulation that we use to get our needs met, to make our ego feel good about ourselves, to feel worthful, that we're finding our self-worth in dysfunctional patterns of behavior. And even though they seem healthy, like a degree, but if you have 6 degrees, is that normal? These are people who are just so hyper functioning, so I think that for women, a lot of times we go into our adolescent years and adulthood, and we haven't really found our voice. We feel strong because we're operating from a place of masculine energy. We're not asking anyone for help. We get in there and we do it. So we feel that we're strong. But the facts show that these are the people who will be violated again in their lifetime in some way. So when we see the Me Too movement going on, and we, hear stories of these women who are in super successful positions of, if maybe even power, they've, reached a level of success, but yet weren't able to find their voice the moment a boss or a mentor attacked them sexually. And we're like, huh? We're like,
Yeah,
come on, what is she, a stupid,
yeah,
bitch? How could that be? Certain people can't understand it. Like, how could I just don't believe it? But there's, a trauma response that's going on. So when a woman finds herself in this trauma state again of being triggered, she's checked out. She's already somewhere else. Her mind is trying to cope with a situation that is exceeding her ability to cope. And so they'll go into a freeze response. We hear about fight and flight, but people will literally freeze and check out just in order to survive what is happening right before them, because they never found their voice. They never came into their own power to be able to set a boundary. There's so much that's going on when an assault of that kind is occurring to you. The disappointment of a mentor betraying you in that way. You literally become like a child again. And those are the things that I think as a society we really shame people for, even men. I know so many men who have had experiences with molestation and they won't even let their wives know that they have had this experience, because there's a weakness and a shame that is attached to that. How could you let that happen to you? Or if a boy was molested by an older woman, you loved it. You lost your virginity to this older woman. You love it. But we see so many guys that chase nothing but older women. And we think that they're just mature. But these things were really rooted from their childhood. So when you say preference, yeah, the men who like to date older women have a preference. I personally dated older men my whole life. I thought it made me the most mature thing. At 17, I was already, I know my mom's probably watching tonight, but I thought I was mature. Talk about molesters. I thought they were boyfriends, but they were just further, probably, what we would consider today illegal.
Hold on a second. I want to stop you there because no, because again, you're hitting everybody in the room. Everybody's making comments because you're striking chords with everybody. Yeah. And again, this is exactly the reason why I wanted to have you on. I was seeking out somebody like you who can come on and you're strong and you're refined and you're confident and you understand exactly who you are. And that gives you the ability to speak about this in the way that you are. You were the person I've been looking for, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. And hold on, let me give you a little. Got to give you a little bit of that. But you're speaking to something now that me and my partner have spoken about, and even a woman in the room, Lunille Dubois. We used to, Lou, that's the big sister right there. We were speaking about these guys, right?
Yeah.
So growing up, when we were in high school, there was always a segment of females that, how should I put this? They're like dating the older dudes. And the older dudes were already out of high school. They had their own cars, their own apartments. And we didn't think anything of it. We just thought, oh, she likes older dudes, right? The reality is that those guys were like soft, like, I don't even know the proper term for these dudes.
I know, because I still, I still have good feelings about many of them. I'm like, they were so good to me. But when you think back now, you're like, they would have been arrested. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I think of that and I'm like, nah, I would, somebody would get hurt. Some old dude coming to pick up my daughter that got his own apartment and ain't in high school no more. Are you? Nah. I think that, creeps. That's the perfect word, Angela. Creeps. We love you too, big sis. You know what it is. She said pedo rapists coming to mind. Let's shift gears. Let's shift gears. I want to ask you something because you mentioned mommy. So Mami todavía está vivo. She's here with
Yes.
us, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. God bless her. So the relationship that you have with your mother now,
Mhm.
where is that? How is that relationship now?
I have a very close relationship with my mom. I actually moved to Georgia to be closer to her. Along this whole path of self-discovery, I wanted to be closer to my mom. I think that I unfairly persecuted my mother for many years.
Mm,
She was the source of my anger. Um, I haven't mentioned yet, but my molester was my grandfather. And he wasn't her biological father, he was her stepfather, but he raised her. And I have seven aunts and uncles from him. And so as I got older, I learned that many people knew about my grandfather's behavior, and I wasn't the only one in the family who was victimized by him. And so as these secrets came out, there was just such an anger that I carried for everyone in my family. I think I've had it out with every aunt and uncle that I all love today, and I hope they're watching. But a lot of just anger and shame, about this family secret that was so hidden. No one in my family really, drinks or does drugs. They're all, good people in church. And so to think that our family has such a secret that has been hidden for so many years, I had a lot of anger to everyone. In Spanish culture, growing up, you hear a lot of, oh, he's a freco, he's a fresh man, just ignore him. And I feel like as I grew up, if I did try to tell someone he did this, they kind of dismissed me. He's just a dirty old man, stay away from him. But no one was really understanding the level to of what I was hiding. When I was trying to voice the alarm and say, he just did something he shouldn't have done. That I wish someone would have pulled me aside and said, what else? What else has he done? I may have been able to vocalize it then, I don't know. But dismissing it made me very angry. So for my teenage years, I finally told my mom around 13, and she was devastated. And but I think that in her own trauma, my mom had been through her own abuses. I still don't know to the level of what she went through with my granddad. We've never really unpeeled that. That's been hard. But I know that my mom, really didn't have her voice either, especially with my dad. She was going through her own traumas and trying to survive. And once she got away from my father, it was just, I have three daughters I have to take care of. I'm going to work, I'm going to school. And my mom busted her ass to do that and give us a good life and take us on vacation. But as a teenager, I didn't understand that. I just saw that my mom was working a lot and not around. And I felt alone. I felt like, so that was it. All those years I thought we were going to go to court, and all those years I thought that, something would come of it. Nothing really came of it, and it was just kind of like, okay, it's out, and put it to bed. So it wasn't until I think I got a little older, like between 17, 18, 19, and the anger really started to present itself, the rebelling. I'm tired of being a good girl. I'm tired of pulling grades. I'm tired of coming home early. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. And I started pushing back against everyone in my family, and talking about this, going to cousins. Did it happen to you? Did it happen to you? I needed to know. I wanted to know everything. And for a long time that rubbed people the wrong way. Not everyone wants to deal with their trauma. Not everybody wants to talk about these things. Especially when I went live with it in public, people are like, what are you doing?
Uncomfortable, right? Super
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
They're like, I have friends on social media who are listening to this. What are you doing? And
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I think everybody needs to put a pin in this moment right here. Because this speaks to who we are as fucking people. Lie, especially now, and I've said this constantly about a different array of topics. Lies are more entertaining than the truth. And people today take truth like it's vinegar,
yeah.
like it's castor oil, when we
Mm-hmm.
should be embracing the truth and standing on
Yeah.
it, right?
Mhm.
The truth doesn't need any defense. It is what the fuck it is. And I think everybody should really take a moment and absorb that.
Yeah.
And if you're not living in that way and you're not accepting that as your reality, beat it.
Yeah.
I can't fuck with you.
And
Because
again, my anger, I had anger for people who lived like that. But I think now I'm at a place where I'm able to understand that it's also a trauma response. It's
right,
also a way that they have learned to cope by
right,
checking out of the truth, by living in a form of denial. If I'm not paying attention to it and I don't think about it, it hasn't happened. Even down to suppressing memories. People will
right.
really, really forget that things happen to them. And I can think of people who slighted me through the years, and then I see them and act like nothing happened. And then afterwards I'd be like, how could I forget they did this to me? But these are trauma responses that our nervous system works through to help us cope and help us to survive. I can't deal with that right now. That exceeds my ability to cope. I'm going to put it back here and I'll deal with it when I can. And then you forget it even happened. And so, when you see people not living in their truth, those are all forms of how we've learned to present ourselves to the world. We kind of hide the real us, and we show up as this person with a mask. And so we're super sensitive to criticism. We're super sensitive to someone holding the mirror up and saying these were your mistakes. We don't want to go through that because we just can't cope with it. So understanding that now, I can look back and say, okay, that's where they were at. Now my sisters and I and my mom, we can talk about this topic. I can say I'm going live on Sunday and I'm going to talk about my history with sexual abuse. And my mom's like, okay, send me the link, where before she was like, oh God, what is she going to say now? So, there is a lot of shame that I think I've carried for other people. And when you're healing, you have to realize that's not my shame to carry. That's not my shame to carry. I'm on a healing journey. I'm here to be better for my daughter, so whatever things people need to work out around me, that's on them. And I don't need to carry that guilt anymore. I need to show up to life authentically as myself, with all parts of me broken and now, evolving and growing.
It's crazy because, you know, we interact with each other on a daily basis for like you have friends and family and years and years and years, right? And I don't know how it is that people expect you to be, you know, like them and act like
Yeah.
them or respond like they do or do the things that we're all different, right? We all come from a different source, a different foundation, and we're all
Mhm.
trying to get through this life one way, shape, or form, right? And we're doing the
Yeah.
best that we can. And I think that people have a knee jerk reaction to always point and go, look at you. Look at you. Look
Yeah.
at that. Look
Yeah.
at this. And it's like, motherfucker, look at you. Have you looked in the mirror
Yeah.
lately? Not everything is a straight line. Nothing's linear. Everything is all over this. It's like a highway,
Yeah.
right? And you deal with it
Yeah.
as it
Yeah.
comes. And either you stay broken down on the side of the road or you fix the fuck and you keep it moving. And you learn and you go, okay, this next time I catch that flat, I know I got a spare in the back, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people spend too much time judging and not
Yeah.
accepting and understanding that we're just humans. We're just imperfect beings trying to live our lives.
That's part of the ego. The ego, I anyone who knows me knows that I was gonna go here, but there's ego and soul in us, and they have different functions for this journey. And this journey is really about learning and extracting the lessons from these painful experiences we go through. So when you haven't done the work and you aren't self-aware, you're usually living more in your ego. Your ego is finding ways to validate itself. It's finding ways to cope and survive. And that is when we will see personality types that are super and judgmental, pointing the finger about everyone else, gossiping, because they're rooted themselves in such a low vibration of energy. They're stuck in their own shame and guilt. And by pointing the finger at you, it takes the light off of them. Then their ego is falsely boosting themselves up to say, I'm better than that. At least I don't do that. And that for even a short moment will make us feel good. Like, oh, I walked away and, I at least did better on that topic than she did. But it keeps us from holding that mirror and that light of truth to ourselves and saying, okay, so where are my flaws? But the irony in what we point our fingers to and judge is that there's usually the reason why it stands out to us and we even feel the need to say something about it is because there's usually some form of that energy is taking place within us. And it might not be identical, but it's an energetic match to a behavior that we possess within ourselves that we too need to work on. So when we're pointing those fingers, we really should stop and bite our tongue and say, now when I hear people talk like that, I'm able to kind of decipher who they are. And I'm able to hear things from a total different perspective and say, okay, now I see what types of energies you're holding in because that bothers you so much, but when you
I'm sorry. I know you're on a
it's
roll,
okay.
but
Please jump in. I'll keep talking forever.
No. You're saying a lot of key things, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people in my life that I know personally, intimately,
Yeah,
people that have experienced levels of trauma in their lives, the ones who come out shining on the other side, and it speaks to something that you said, that you listen to people speak and you already pick up on who they are.
yeah,
Super fucking perceptive,
yeah.
right? They
Trauma
just
response.
no. I know personally somebody who's like that, and I'll make like we'll just be talking casually, and I'll be like, yeah, I saw so and so. He's full of shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw this one and that one, the brother and the sister. Yeah, that guy's a fucking user. You understand? And it's not that's not the topic of the conversation,
Yeah.
but this person always, and I'm like, fuck, how do they know these things? Like they just naturally, innately pick up on them, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's almost like the suppression and the trauma. Sorry, the suppression and the trauma closes certain doors in your psyche,
Yeah.
but then it starts to open up as you
Absolutely.
strengthen yourself and fight back. It starts strengthening areas that had dust on them and were
Yeah.
shut down, right?
100%. Yeah.
Which leads to my next question. Do you feel that these personality types can sniff people out? That they can pinpoint, like you said, I can hear them talk and I already know. Do you
I
feel on
think
the
that what happens is that when you go through some kind of a trauma or you're living in some type of a trauma where your needs aren't being met, the brain and the nervous system they figure things out on how to get my needs met. So what we hear a lot online now is an empath, or I'm an empath, or he's a narc, he's a narcissist. They're really just part of a spectrum. They're different ends of the emotional spectrum. So
right?
growing up, you may learn that to get your parents' attention, since they're always busy or in a bad mood, is to clean the house, anticipate their needs, read their face. Should I bother them now? Are they in a good mood? Should I come back later? You become super perceptive of the people who are around you, including your teachers. How do I fawn to them? How do I appease them? How do I please them to get my needs met? But what happens is that on the opposite side of that spectrum, you can develop narcissistic tendencies. Both the empath and a narcissist are both super intuitive. It's like they're psychic. They can read minds, they can feel people's emotions, they can see subtle energy shifts in a room. They can totally see things on people's faces that someone who hasn't had a trauma background, they normally wouldn't perceive. But for a narcissist, they learn to be a bit more manipulative in getting their needs met. They may learn to bully a little bit. They may learn to become a taker to get their needs met, where the empath learns to fawn and appease and never say no and never set boundaries. So they're both on the opposites, ends of a spectrum. Is how did you learn to get your needs met as a child? That will usually be how you continue trying to get your needs met as an adult. And then there's all these people in the middle who are just kind of like, oblivious to these subtle shifts of energy that both an empath and a narc are picking up. But those are the ones that'll normally get into a relationship is someone on the when they say opposites attract, they do. You know, you don't often see an empath with an empath. You see an empath with a narcissist, because the empath loves to give and not set boundaries and do whatever they need to just be accepted. And then the narcissist is like, all right, I'm willing to take everything you have because you're never going to be able to quench my need for validation and fulfillment. Everything will be about me. And the empath is like, yeah, okay, I can do that, you know, because I have no voice and I don't know who I am and I don't even know what my needs are. So I'll be so busy meeting your needs, I'll feel useful. And so that's the heart of what we see in toxic relationships, where you know, the empath, and it could be a man or a woman. It's not, you know, we think it's only women that get stuck in those relationships, but you see a lot of men who overgive and overfunction and overperform, and the woman will take, and it's never enough. They'll dismiss you, they'll disrespect you. So that can be, you know, for either male or female when you're in a toxic relationship, but that's the root of them.
Yes,
That's
ladies and
the root
gentlemen,
of what's playing out.
do not get it fucking confused 1 second. Women can be a narcissistic
Oh
personality
yeah.
type, and they can abuse the shit out of men.
Oh yeah.
Like, the male is the physically stronger sex. I believe and still believe that women are way smarter. Or let me say this. Let me reel it in a little bit.
We do have a different form of wisdom. We do.
a definitive different form of wisdom when you key in on it.
Yeah.
Women are more cunning.
Yeah.
Women can be super deceptive. And I'm talking about on the surface. I'm not talking about some guy that slick talks, yeah, I'm going to go to the football game and he's fucking the side chick. No, not that bullshit. I'm talking about chess moves type
Yes.
deception.
Yes.
Women have both energies, and a lot of men don't understand that. And it's especially missing today. Men have destroyed the relationship and the woman's proper place in our lives. And I'll say this, and you know, guys, he don't know what he's talking about. Listen, bro, you haven't been in a relationship long enough to come and talk to me. And if you have, I've known people that have stayed in abusive relationships their entire lives. So that doesn't mean shit. I'm talking about two people that are imperfect and giving each other the proper balance and the love that makes it whole and makes it perfect for them.
A woman will bring that wisdom to the relationship and guide her husband. You know, when there's a healthy dynamic there, a woman can really show you how to do those chef's moves as a man and say, you know, this is where we're going, and then give it to the man to lead and do his thing. But when done in an unhealthy and dysfunctional type of you know, behavior pattern, it can be cunning. You know, women can be very cunning and several steps ahead of you.
Several fucking days
Several.
and that's the thing. And I say this as well. The woman, part of what a woman, and I hate to say this because it sounds sexist, but just bear with me. Part of a woman's position in the relationship is to be the eyes to see the things that he doesn't, and his ears to hear the things that he misses. And the most important position and role that she plays is his counsel. Because we've said this before. My wife will tell me, upon meeting somebody who I've known for years, like lifetime, that's not your friend. That's not your friend. And I'm like, hey, what are you talking? That guy's my family. Like, what is wrong? That's not your friend. And sure
100%.
enough, 100% right.
They see it years before.
and as I've been married 25 years, I've learned to say, when she talks, I'm going to listen and I'm going to key in and I'm going to absorb and pay attention. I'm not just going to be dismissive, because 90%, 95% of the time, she's talking for a reason, right? So now,
absolutely,
Janeen, I feel like me and you need another episode for sure. Not that we're ending here, but I feel like we need another episode. All right. So,
I'd love to. I got a million things I haven't even gone over.
I hear you flipping the pages. I was like, yo, she has content upon content. So let's talk about
Oh God.
now. Let's talk about now, because
Yeah.
I picked up a few of your videos on your IG about publishing, right?
Okay.
And I'm even more so interested about the two books that you have published, because I want everybody to sort of become familiar with your writing, right? So the books that you have written, what are they based on? Like, what are the storylines? Because I get the feeling that these stories aren't like, green eggs and ham and Three Little Pigs. And what are the storylines in the books that you've written?
Well, my debut book is A Time to Clean, and it's about cleaning, believe it or not, because um, what my books will be about, they are rhymes, ironically, but what
Mhm.
they are geared to is helping parents understand that critical brain formation process that occurs between 0 and 7, and all the things that we should be kind of putting in their backpack as tools for them for when they get older. And a lot of us miss that mark. We really don't. We think that we have so much time to teach our children who to be, but between 0 and 5, it's really solidified. By the time you're 5, that's who you're going to be. So the books that I have coming up in the pipeline are really all towards gearing them up for the emotional spectrum, the positive habits that they should be developing, which is something like cleaning. Cleaning is such a foundation of our mental status. When we are taught young how to keep our environment, how to keep ourselves, that's something that we take into adulthood. We'll be able to organize. We'll be able to even organize information in our brain and compartmentalize issues that we're going through. So teach a child how to clean and how to organize before they turn 5 is such an important thing that so many parents miss. They think they're too young. They're too young for that concept. They don't know how to do this. I can do it better. And so they never really give their child the opportunity how to learn to be a full functioning adult, because we're always kind of rescuing our kids and being helicopter parents over them. So my children's series will be really geared to those types of things that we should be having conversations with our kid. Just for an example, when COVID began, news came out that if children were diagnosed with COVID, they were being taken to the hospital without their parents, and that didn't happen for very long. I think a lot of hospitals immediately caught backlash for it and started to figure out ways on how to have the parent at the bedside. But for myself, as someone who knows that your children must be prepared emotionally for the types of experiences they're going to come up against, I started training my daughter and doing play exercises with her about, oh my God, let me take your temperature. You have a fever? Okay, let's put on our mask. We're gonna go to the doctor. I would literally act out with her what would happen if she was diagnosed with COVID, and saying, okay, mom can't come with you, but I'm gonna call you on the phone and on video, and the doctors are gonna take care of you. Don't be scared. And we did this over and over. And I had posted about it. And I told parents, prepare your children. Don't scare them. Don't make them anxious. You're responsible for their emotional regulation, but do have these hard conversations with them because they can take it. And by preparing them for what they may experience, they are able to better cope with crisis and hard events, so that they don't become trauma. They'll be ready for them. And when I posted that, I had a couple of people say, "Oh no, I don't agree with that." Even put eye emojis where they're rolling their eyes, like, "Oh, that sounds a little crazy." But I think that this is why I believe in this type of content, because I do feel that we send our kids off into the world, and even on the playground, we really don't understand the things that are going on in other children's homes and how advanced they are. And you can be doing your best job to shelter your child, but they will be exposed somewhere, and if you haven't prepared them for those experiences, then they will be put in positions where their ability to cope with that experience exceeds their capability, and now their brain is experiencing a form of trauma.
Where do we
That's
find
for the
the book?
children.
Where do
This
we?
book is on Amazon, A Time to Clean by Janeen Torres. It's
Okay,
on Amazon now.
hold on a second.
And the painted poem I've been giving away as a promo for free for a little while, so I actually can send people an email PDF copy of it. My websites are all being redone right now. They should be going live this week because I'm launching a new project. But if people just jump on and hit my subscribe and I get their email, then I can just mail them the painted poem for free.
Well, we're going to do something a little different right now. Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. That book, I have two nephews, Josiah and Asa. Josiah is the older one. He's going to be 4 now. Asa's still a toddler. He's 2. But I've been adding to their book collection.
Okay.
I just had an artist on El Viajero about 5 or 6 episodes back, and he had a children's book geared towards historical figures from Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Snatched that book up, one for my little sun foos, as I call them, and one for my hopefully future grandchild. If my children ever decide, one day they want to bless me with a grandchild, it would be nice. My brother's almost going to be 50 out here with no damn grandchildren.
It's expensive.
That doesn't matter. That's not the point. Forget about expenses. I need some grandchildren in my life.
Hint.
Yes, for sure. But I want to add this A Time to Clean by Miss Torres to their collection. I think this is a very, very vital book to have. Cleaning is a discipline.
Yeah, and right? It's about positive habit formation and teaching parents to be mindful about the habits that they are instilling in their children. Mm-hmm. A poor habit in childhood will be a poor habit in adulthood. And if your children don't learn the basic tenements of how to keep your environment, this is how we see people lose, as they're struggling with mental health. Now those habits, if they don't have a habit to clean, if they don't have a habit of self-care, then these are the first things that will start to deteriorate when you are struggling with crisis. And this is how we see people get into situations where their home is in disarray or even into hoarding, because they are such in a freeze trauma response that their mind can't even begin, where do I begin to pick up? Where do I begin to look? So, something like cleaning and organizing, those are things that your child by 5 should have mastered. They should know small, medium, large. What bucket does this go into? What bucket does this go into? So it's very important.
I think overall, the message of the book is about discipline.
Yeah.
And adhering to that discipline and understanding that the structure and discipline of holding that structure is what's vitally important to their development.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you can adhere to the discipline and it's second nature,
yes.
When you start going through life as a young adult and an adult, homework, work, exercise, adhering to proper diet and things of that nature aren't that difficult.
Yes.
They just seem like tasks that they have to complete.
And they teach you to be resilient. Data shows that the people who have these positive habits that are formed in childhood are more resilient. The more you read, the more knowledge that you have, these things make you resilient to trauma. When we don't have the proper habit formations in our life, when we are struggling with lack of education, these things make us more susceptible to trauma. So, you think you're letting your children get away with not reading, or you're doing their homework for them, or you're enabling them. You're not building their resilience to life. If you have these morals and values and they're a part of who you are, you will at least stay functioning and be able to hold a job and be able to keep your home clean and meet your children's basic needs until, the epiphany comes of, there's more work to be done. And I need to go deeper into self-evaluation until I develop that level of self-awareness.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining the show, I'm your host, Mr. A. And this is the set 6145. Tonight, we welcome Miss Janeen Torres Cabrera. And Janeen is just dropping the hammer on everything. I mean, she really is. We've covered so much here. And I think that, especially for all the people in the room that are people of color, and I see you all, which is basically almost the entire room, basically. Your childhood wasn't abusive just because mommy and daddy had you cleaning the house at 3 and 4 years old. My sisters, God bless them. My sister, especially today, my sister Debbie.
Yeah.
Let me just put it this way. We had a family party because you know in the 70s, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to assume your age. I was born in the 70s. In the 70s and early 80s, family, there was parties always every weekend with family, right?
Yeah.
My sister was such a clean freak that she slept walk. She got up at, in the middle of the night, was picking up all the plates from the party
Yeah.
while everybody's still there,
Yeah.
picking up all the plates, cups, and everything, and went to like the corner of the wall thinking it was like a cabinet or something and was trying to
Yeah.
open it. Got frustrated, put the dishes down, and went to bed. That's how programmed she was as far as cleaning is concerned.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Miss Cabrera is touching on so many different aspects of her life. One, two, what has brought her to this point, what has built her, what gave her her tough skin. And I'm sure everybody in the room could really relate to a lot of the things that she's touched on. But most of all, I think Janeen's honesty and openness in this moment is something that's so needed. And I hope for, in some way, shape, or form or fashion, that somebody in the room has connected with her in a way that makes them feel better about the things that they experienced in life. That's really the reason why we brought Miss Cabrera here tonight. But not only that, but to speak to her accomplishments as well. And I think that children's book is just amazing. So, everybody who's watching, you need to support Miss Cabrera. And again, it's on Amazon. It's called The Time to Clean Board Book by
And I
Miss.
have some adult content coming out soon. I have a book called Broken, which is about toxic relationships. That's for adults. And
Nice.
it will be downloadable soon. Check back on my website. It's Janeen Torres 321.com. And what I'm doing now is I'm really working with people on a closer level. I went through years of therapy and I really didn't feel that I extracted the healing that I needed to extract from that. But I
Mhm.
feel that when you deal with people who have been through trauma, that they can guide you in a different way. They can literally show you the roadmap of what they went through to heal. And so I work with my own mentor, but now I'm doing my own coaching with people who have had this experience, and I'm teaching them resilience and mindset training and how to reprogram your brain from these patterns that we've developed of thought and belief. And so I also have an online course coming out soon where people can kind of teach themselves and work their way on their own. Because when you have trauma, it's hard to open up to people sometimes. It's hard to get going. It's hard to move from your house sometimes and not isolate, or to even do the work of finding a therapist and calling your insurance. It's all very overwhelming to people with trauma. But being able to sit at your computer and go through video trainings and worksheets that prompt you to teach your brain how to rewire itself. For me, that was beneficial. For me, reading self-help books and nurturing my talents was really how I pulled myself out of this dark place. So writing for me was my go-to when I was really struggling with life and health issues and things that were happening to me. Which is I found myself at the end side of healing and saying, okay, now what do I do with all this content?
Right.
I'm a business manager. What does this make me? Am I a writer now? What do I do with all this stuff? So a career was born out of, me nurturing my talents. So when I speak in schools, I speak to children about, what are your talents? When you're going through trauma, sometimes it's hard to realize, because maybe no one has showed you that you have talents. Everyone has a talent and everyone has a spiritual gift. And you really need to connect to those parts of yourself to fully develop your sense of who you are. And those are the ways that you can contribute back to the world through your art and your gifts, and find your purpose and your love for yourself again.
You
So
definitely, yeah. I saw two of your YouTube videos, and all I kept thinking to myself was, you know what, she needs to like continue this series because, it's not only a female thing, but I
yeah.
think it's vitally important in this moment for the environment that we have somebody who advocates and can bring that real experience and speak to it in such a way that you do to young ladies, because
Mhm.
there's so many of them out there, at all levels. There's probably women our age and older that still haven't dealt with this trauma. And
100%.
then there are those that can't even protect themselves, the little children that are
Yeah.
dealing with this. And you understand? So I think it's something that, you should definitely, well, I'm sure you're going to continue to do, but you should really explore
Yeah.
putting out more video content.
Yeah, I
Speaking.
definitely am. I'm just getting going. So my YouTube page just recently went up, and I'm going to be sharing a ton of free content. And I have a Facebook group on Facebook. It's called Walk With Me, and I share videos and I share memes and I share facts about trauma, because I do feel that I feel like us understanding the journey and how trauma and pain evolve us and refine us and show us what we're capable of. I feel like this is the hard reset that we needed in society. We've spent so many years as humanity just struggling to survive, and then growing little by little and changing in our masculine and feminine roles of what role does a man play, what role does a female play, and dismissing things because there was just no time for it. But I feel like now we're in a place where people are awakening. People realize, even if they're not religious, they realize that there is, some kind of divinity and divine purpose that goes on in our life. And I really feel that is the root of trauma and pain, is that it quickens our learning, and it's the purpose of why we're here. So if we bypass and suppress the lessons that are to be extracted from that pain, we kind of waste this life. We don't teach ourselves to be resilient, and we will be beyond the veil one day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't toughened your consciousness to be able to cope, to be able to understand that there is a higher purpose, to understand the journey, to walk away with the lessons, you're going to struggle there too. You're going to struggle on that side just as you're struggling on this side. And any kind of scripture or philosophical book I've ever read, they all point to the same truths. You have to become resilient here. There are vibrations that exist on Earth that are heavy. I use in my logo a spiral, and it's because that spiral of creation is really also the emotional spiral. And on Earth, many of us are stuck in emotions that are very low, low in hertz. So most of humanity, we vibrate at a level of around 200 hertz. We're able to measure these things now and see that these are the vibrations people actually give off. And when you're stuck in your trauma, you're much lower than 200. You're somewhere vibrating around 75 or 100, 175, which is shame and apathy and grief. Victimhood mentalities. The world is against me, and it's very hard to pull yourself from that low, dense vibration. In essence, that is hell. That is where consciousness will get stuck if it doesn't realize that there is a higher purpose to this pain. And so our job is to climb that emotional spectrum all the way to enlightenment. Will we ever reach enlightenment here in this earth? No, we won't. But our job is to be vibrating somewhere around acceptance and joy and understanding that we're interconnected with each other, and we have to support people, and we have to reach out for support. There's no shame in saying I need help, even if it's I need medication right now to stabilize, and then I can do the work. There's no shame in that. And we really have to stop boosting our own self-image by knocking other people and where they're at on their journey. That really says a lot about how weak we really are, that we're still in that critical mindset that we can only find strength through knocking someone else down. Instead, build them up. Start to understand how certain patterns of behavior are formed, and make the association when you see your friend or a relative or a husband or a wife behaving in a certain way. Start to be able to offer compassion and empathy and say, oh, I know exactly where that behavior came from, or that way of thinking. And now, how do I work with them to try to, help them come up from that? And not everybody will want to help. Not everybody will want to be helped. That's okay too. Some people do not want to heal. They don't want to do the work. It's too much for them. And that's where we see suicide come in. People who have given up. And it's a sad thing to watch. It's a sad thing to watch someone devolve on the emotional spectrum that way. But you have to also respect people and where they're at. So when I have people that come to me and want to work with me, that's a big part of, my assessment. Is it even worth my energy to get involved with this person? How committed are they to that journey
Yeah.
of really, ripping apart the onion and figuring out who they are, because not everybody really wants to go there. And people will become angry with you if you try to force them to heal when they're not ready to heal. Everyone has to be ready at their time. But minimally, we can begin to start offering compassion and stop with the labels. She's a slob, or he's a this or he's a that. These are all forms of survival that people have adapted to be able to get up and do it again the next day. So we have to really understand our purpose here, and stop wasting our time. We really don't have a lot of time to extract the lessons that we came here to learn. So, even my trauma, I feel that a lot of that was part of my journey. I find ways to cope with it, because I know that those were experiences that I was meant to go through in this incarnation that were going to teach me something. They were going to refine me. They were going to make me smarter and more capable. So I think that when you can look at life from that angle, you start to lose that victim mentality of things are happening to me versus things are happening for me, for my evolution, so that I can continue vibrating higher and higher and higher until we are back with our divine creator.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't really think you understood what was just happening here. We are energy.
Yes.
Always keep that understanding about you. We are energy. And even though we're in a vessel right now, that energy doesn't dissipate. It doesn't disappear.
No.
It's going to go somewhere.
No.
So if that went over your head, pick up a book, damn it. But I can appreciate the fact that Miss Janeen brought it to the set, and she's speaking on things that, maybe you don't give enough time to, but also pointing to the fact that people need to start behaving differently towards each other, which I understand is going to be difficult, because when you're in your personality, when you're in who you are and have been for so many years, holding yourself to account is not something you're looking to do.
It's hard.
This
The
is
ego doesn't want it.
Yeah, exactly what the ego does not want it, because this is who you are and have been.
Mm-hmm.
So looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? I'm kind of a dick. I'm full of shit.
Yeah.
I hurt people.
Yeah.
I'm not such a good friend.
Yeah.
There's a lot more labels we can run down, but just holding oneself to account is not something we as humans care to do very much of. Right.
And that's where all healing stems from, is that self-awareness, being able to say, why did I do that? Why do I do that? And looking at yourself and examining it, and not just shrugging it off, because then that means that your ego is really operating your body and not your soul. And we're here to learn how to let our soul operate in this body, in this low vibration. How do we show up and be love and be compassion, which is what every divine creator has asked us to be. We get so into our anger and judgment and criticism, and that's everything opposite of our faith. But yet, we're all saying Happy Easter and Merry Christmas and Happy Ramadan, but who is really living their faith? Who is really living those tenements of love and compassion? So that's that struggle of light and darkness that we hear about all that time, that duality. It exists within us too. So there's your ego and there's your soul, and your ego doesn't want you to see all its little quirks. Your ego can be healthy. It can give you, that pride and motivation you need, but it can mostly be dysfunctional and unhealthy. So that programming is what you have to kind of move away from, and learn to operate more from a place of soul, which begins with love and acceptance and compassion. And if you can begin offering those things to yourself, naturally you'll be able to offer them to others.
Man, Janeen, let me tell you something. In a world of damaged people, right? That would be something that we would all practice, because speaking to religion specifically the way that you did, the tenets are sort of identical and parallel as you look at all of them. They all stem from, when you boil it down, it goes back to what? To love, right? And being compassionate and caring for each other, because we're part of the human family. So
that's it. There's no black or white beyond the veil. There's no anything. It's
Right.
just energy.
So when you look around the world and you see how people are acting,
Hmm.
it paints a totally different picture. And you
It's sad,
can't,
and it's why we're struggling.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the entire world is struggling,
We see
especially
health
women.
illness, increasing. I
Hmm.
think people have really just lost their foundation to so many things, from spirituality to even religion. We keep thinking that we've got it on our own. Especially in America, there's this individual mindset of me. I'm competitive even with my sisters, my cousins. I gotta win. I gotta win. And we're trying to validate ourselves in that way. And we've gone so far away from understanding our purpose and our connection to each other, and how we're co-creators of this whole experience. And these are the parts that we blind ourselves through ego, being so distracted with entertainment, and never really finding that time to sit with yourself. You have to train your brain to learn how to sit with itself and to sit in silence. And in the beginning, it is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to be hard to do those things. But with practice and just a minute every day, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 8 minutes, before you know it, you're able to sit in silence for 10 minutes. You will begin to connect again to those magical parts of this divine creation. You will be able to hear your intuition, your higher self, your ancestors. You will be able to get guidance, but when you're filling your life with so much noise and distraction and ego, you're never able to tap into any of that, and you're lost. I call that being lost in the woods. You're trying to find your way out, and you don't even realize you're lost.
Be still, children. It
Be still.
helps. It
Yeah.
very much so helps. Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody can see the ticker right now, the number's at the bottom. If you want to call, give some well wishes, speak a piece, whatever it may be, we're going to give about 10 minutes for everybody. If you want to call in, the number's at the bottom, 973-765-6247. Just bang the line and we'll take your call. I think that going into this sort of moment with you,
Yeah.
I had a slew of different items um, that I wanted to touch on. But as we start to speak and engage, it sort of takes a life of its own.
I
But
know.
I can definitely appreciate how you still were able to bring the other points, because I knew you came here prepared. And we didn't really get to have a preamble because we had some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
But it speaks to your person and your professionalism, and I could just appreciate it, how you just bring everything out. And again, I have to say salute to you, because it takes a very strong person to walk in your shoes and be able to reach this place,
Mhm.
and still have the fortitude to be open and honest about everything. you know I hope that you continue doing what you're doing, because again, man, I just think the environment that we're in now, we need people like you to advocate and bring these things to light and reach people in that way. And
Yeah.
specifically women. Women, again, we're the stronger sex, we're the physically stronger sex, but the women are the foundation of this earth. And it's a shame. It's a shame that men have forgotten that.
Yeah.
They've allowed, this country that, feeds off materialism and all these different things to switch their mindset. And we've abandoned the value
Mhm.
of our women.
Yeah.
And it shows in everything that's in this world. You turn the TV on, you listen to music, you look at fashion.
Mhm.
It's not upsetting. It's more frustrating to see happen,
And
because it's
even that is as
Mhm.
much a trauma response as anything. When men and women begin to develop distorted energies, your masculine and feminine energy. Every woman has masculine and feminine energy. Every man has masculine and feminine energy.
Mhm.
And so, men suffer from those same traumas. Having a mom that was always dating, having a mom who always had men in the house, seeing their mom be abused by different men, that will certainly distort their masculine and feminine energy. And that will contribute to them becoming an abuser or being in a toxic relationship, in the future, whether they are the one that are more in their feminine energy or more in their masculine energy, but it's either way, it's distorted energy. And we see that with men who are hyper competitive, hyper successful, always chasing goals, hypersensitive to criticism. They really.
I'm sorry. Do you know any men who have that you have dealt with, like counseling, or have come across in your path that have dealt with sexual abuse?
Oh, tons.
Hold on a second. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Becky. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Good evening, caller. State your name and tell us where you're calling from.
Becky, calling from Georgia.
Okay, Becky, what would you like to say tonight from Georgia?
I am the speaker's, and I just wanted to tell her that I've been watching, and I'm so proud of her, and I love her.
Thank you.
Shout out to Becky from Georgia.
Thank you so much.
Becky is my big sister.
Becky, your big sister? Oh, wait.
My big sister.
Yeah.
Salute to Becky from Georgia calling in, the big sis. We see you. Thank you so much for your call.
No problem. Enjoying the show. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, the big sister called in. That was very nice of her.
Yes.
So, do you know men who you've,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Really?
The more that I talk, about trauma and sexual abuse, the more I find friends or husbands of friends will start to open up and share with their wife, things that they had never said before. Being in positions where they were maybe in a rough neighborhood and always hanging out in a grocery store, and someone from the grocery store luring them to the back, come, I've got candy, or I've got this, and pulling their pants down. Just so many, and more so, young boys. We think, you tend as a parent, or when we think about sexual abuse, we look at women who allow men in their house, or women who leave their child with, a new boyfriend. We're like, what was she thinking? You left your daughter alone with this predator. You can't do that. But we really don't think about the amount of women who leave their sons with teenage girls, and how many of these young boys are being molested by these teenage girls. And so I have met so many men who were between the ages of 7 and 10 and were left with either an adult woman or an adult babysitter, and that was their first sexual experience. And they never truly processed it. May have made them angry towards women, abusive towards women, or date older women, have an older woman fetish, things like that. But I think that seems like it's almost just as common as young girls who had an experience with a family friend who touched them inappropriately. It's overlooked, and it's not, really something we address, and if we're ever going to make strides with mental health and abuse and trauma, we really need to start looking at what men are dealing with also. We want them to be protectors, we want them to be leaders, we want them to be all these things, but are we making room for them to also be emotional? Sometimes we look at men. Yeah.
Hold that thought. We got another call.
Okay.
It's Beverly Fulham. To accept, press 1. To send a voice.
Caller, state your name and where you're calling from.
Miss Beverly, I'm calling from Houston.
Miss Beverly, calling from Houston. What would you like to say tonight? Miss Beverly?
Hi.
Hi. How are you? What would you like to say tonight? You're live.
I'm good. Oh my gosh, I enjoyed this episode so much. I was just going crazy, resonating left, right, and center with Miss Torres. It was just absolutely amazing. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Learned so much about myself. The self-help books. I have literally lived my entire life reading every self-help book 100%.
As have I.
Okay.
And, you know, the narcissist and empath, every single relationship I've had has been with the worst narcissist ever. You've really, really given a lot to think about. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in and calling. I appreciate it.
Yes, Miss Beverly, we really appreciate you calling in. Thank you so much for your call.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I told you, Janine.
That means a lot.
Man, I wanted to point this out. I have a gentleman in the room. I don't know exactly the trauma he's endured, but this is somebody that I know I grew up with. And he stated twice that, you know, he was connecting and it speaks to his trauma. And the last entry he made, he said, I was 9.
Wow.
And again, the people that are closest to you, that you grew up with, that you know and love, that you know, that you spend time with, that you've given a piece of your life to, you never really know what's going on with them. And to just to read this right now at you know, I'm 48 years old. You know, I know this gentleman a good 20 years. You know, to read that is just, man, that hurts. You know what I mean?
And the only way, you know, if we're ever really going to start understanding what people are going through, it's really through observance of their behavior without judgment. You know, so when you see a child and you're calling him a little badass, you know, it's easy to say, oh, you know, they're raised in a ghetto environment, or they're raised with no instruction and no discipline. But do you care if the child is going to bed hungry every night? Do you care if his mom is selling him, you know, for a score on her drugs? Do you really care about the bad child in your neighborhood that you see, or that you see at your church, or you see in your classroom? You know, beyond being frustrated by them, are you really taking the time to understand, where is this kid's behavior coming from? Are they always sick? You know, do they have a bellyache all the time? Are they urinating on themselves at an inappropriate age? Are they hoarding food or hoarding items? You know, if you're in a position where you're exposed to children at that age, these are critical things to be looking for, to be able to intervene in a child's life and raise the alarm. You know, for, you know, one of the things that don't make sense in our society is that if we know someone is being attacked in the street or abused, we can immediately call the cops and say, go arrest that person. They you know, they were just attacked by so and so. But for children, it doesn't work that way. You have to open up a report. Even if you see a child actively being abused on the street, you cannot just call the cops and have that parent arrested on the spot. So sounding the alarm early enough is the determining factor between saving a kid's life and seeing them on the news and saying, oh my God, I missed that opportunity to help that child. Because by the time you call, by the time CPS comes out and a report is made, before they start investigating the parent, it may be too late. It may be too late for, you know, for any intervention to happen in that child's life. So, you know, stop with the judgment and the criticism and really start to pay attention to the children in your community that you see by themselves all the time. Where is that kid coming from, walking around at 10 o'clock at night all the time? If they're only 7, you know, where do they live? Follow them home one day and get the address and sound the alarm. Stop thinking.
Follow from a distance.
Follow from a distance. Don't approach them. You know, but certainly if they're on your block and you see them all the time, you know, this mentality of mind your business, you know, who is it really serving? It's serving the predators. It's serving the abusers, you know, to turn away. If you see, you know, your friend is really struggling with health issues, and, you know, even now we see younger and younger women, younger and younger people all the time are coming down with MS and lupus. We see them with just so many chronic ailments. You know, these are big cues that someone in your life is dealing with a lot. You know, they're repressing a lot of emotion. They're not processing things that they went through. And by the time you're 40, but 30, you know, mid 30s, 40, your health starts to take an effect, because your mental pain body is overwhelmed. Your spiritual pain body is overwhelmed. The only thing left now is the physical. So now your physical pain body will start to manage this energy that is stuck within you, and it will start to literally eat you from the inside out. So you'll start to see people with diabetes and heart disease because their bodies just can't manage this constant pain and state that the nervous system is in all the time. And so you see a lot of women coming down with lupus, and I have so many friends now that there's no history of this in their families. They're the first one to get it. They're confused. They can't understand where it came from. But these are roots of, self-rejection, self-hate, self-loathing, that we've just given up our own voice. We've given up even trying to fight back and set boundaries. And these are how it presents itself. It will attack the chakra that's associated with wherever that issue is. I suffer from thyroid disease. For so long, I didn't have my voice. I'm still learning to use my voice, and I use it when it's shaking now. I try to just say what I need to say, and in doing that, I can heal myself. I know that I can heal myself. So when you start to look at the parts of you that are ailing, that are sick, what does that correlate to with health? What parts of your body do they regulate? And even looking at a health ailment, you can reverse engineer the type of emotion that you have trapped in your body, and the types of pains that you're suppressing within you that are now making you physically ill.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to do it again. If you don't realize what Miss Janeen is doing, she's lined up all her ducks in a row. She's just knocked them down. Pay attention. If you haven't, too bad for you. You're gonna have to watch. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the end of the show. But what I want to say is we are gonna have Miss Janeen back here. We don't know what the subject matter is going to be. We don't know what we're going to be talking about. But I just want everybody to put a pin in the fact that Miss Janeen Torres Cabrera is going to be back on the set, and we're going to have another discussion. I hopefully would like to have a panel, because I feel like that would bring even more to the table. So, we're going to make that happen one way, shape, or form.
Awesome. Sounds exciting.
Before you go, I want to say that you are now part of the set family. If in the future you have an event, you have something you need to promote, you're putting out a new book, we want the exclusive. Whatever it is, all you have to do is reach out. The platform is yours.
So much. That means so much to have your support and to just allow me to come on and talk and share my story. I really am so indebted to you. Thank you.
No, not indebted. This is the platform where people come to learn and connect with each other.
Yeah.
Right. This is real people telling real stories, and this is where we have to do it. So you're not indebted to me. You're part of the family, and that's how it is. So I'm going to put you in the green room. We're going to talk behind the scenes. I'm going to close the show out. But I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
It's Janeen Torres Cabrera. Stand by. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, if you're just joining us, you missed the show. Go back and watch it. I want to say salute to everybody in the room. I hope everybody learned something. I hope there's something that you've taken away from this. I hope that this has raised your senses, if you would, to pay attention to the people around you, especially our young people, and specifically our young females. I would implore everybody who has a daughter, if you're a dad, make sure you do everything in your power to let her know that you will never leave her side and you'll never abandon her. And you make sure every day of her life, you teach her that she does not have to look for validation in the eyes of other men, ever. And with that said, all I can say is thank you, man. I appreciate everybody coming on tonight. The 2 phone calls that we received, everybody who stayed throughout the whole show, I really appreciate you guys. We're going to be coming back with more content. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. As you just seen, man, this was heavy, but needed. So again, I appreciate everybody. Make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share. We're going to be throwing a YouTube event. It's going to be an event that's only on YouTube. I'll post the link on the Facebook page. We really need to get our subscribership up there. So we're going to set it up. It'll probably be June, July, but it's going to be something special, and I hope everybody can make it. So with that said, man, thank you so much, and good night.